Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Wise Body Podcast, where we talk about eating disorder recovery and all things body. I'm your host, Dr. Sarah Hughes. I bring 20 years of experience as an eating disorder therapist, and I've worked with hundreds of clients to feel more empowered and connected to their body by tapping into the wisdom it holds. I'm so excited to keep learning with you as we navigate the windy path that is recovery. So let's get started. Hi, and welcome to the next episode of The Wise Body. Today, I'm excited to introduce my friend and colleague, Rebekah Doweyko. Becca and I met when we worked at the same eating disorder program 10 years ago, and we've been friends ever since. Becca has been in the eating disorder field for 26 years, has worked at all levels of care, and has shared her expertise through training several clinical teams over the years. In her former position as clinical director at Walden Behavioral Care, she developed several specialized eating disorder tracks, serving the LGBTQ+ and Jewish populations, as well as developing a weight-inclusive task force, which focused on challenging weight stigma and individualizing weight restoration and weight-neutral goals. She is multi-state licensed, and after recognizing the need for more eating disorder specialized outpatient care, she answered the call and opened Bardwell Behavioral, where she continues to provide the compassionate training and care she is most known for. Please welcome Rebekah Doweyko.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Wise Body Podcast. I'm so excited today to share with you all my next guest, Rebekah Doweyko. And we know each other from having worked at a treatment center. It was almost 10 years ago now, 2014 to 2016, I think. I was there with you when we overlapped. Rebekah was the director of the program. I was assistant director. And so we worked really closely together. Rebekah, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day today to join me today to talk a bit about a very big topic, body image. So welcome, Rebekah.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited.
This is really awesome. We haven't seen each other in a while, so this is so nice.
Yeah.
And when I was thinking about friends and colleagues to have on the show, you were definitely top of mind. And I try to think of topics, and body image came to my mind because I have learned so much from you about body image. And so today, for the benefit of our listeners, I was thinking that we could pick your brain a little bit about body image and just have a conversation about it.
Absolutely. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you.
So, I mean, maybe we talk like at a very rudimentary sort of level, just like start at the beginning, like what body image even is, because I think it can feel so elusive and big, and what are we even talking about? And so how do you define it? And maybe you take pieces from things that you've learned and read, but like how do you define body image for people?
Yeah. I think probably one of the most important things I've learned over the last 26 years of working with folks with eating disorders and being a female on the planet is that I think we don't ask individuals enough what their definition of body image is, because I think that everybody has a different definition and an individual definition. And I've met with hundreds of men, women, children, boys, girls, families, individuals with eating disorders over the last 26 years. And I've never heard the same story twice. I've never heard the same definition twice. And I think too often we're not asking the question and asking people, how do you define body image? And tell me about your body image. And I think we are quick to make assumptions. I think we are quick to talk about body image with an anorectic bias and not include people's experience of all body types. And that's something that even more so, I'd say over the last 5 years, I have been learning more about and asking more questions about. And so the definition of body image that I'm going to share today is mine and what I've learned by talking with people. And this does not mean that it applies to everybody. But my thoughts on body image is not just how you see yourself and see your body, but I think it's it includes the importance and the pressure that one puts on themselves and that we can put on ourselves for how other people see us and value our bodies. And too often we let other people define how we value ourselves and our bodies, and the value that our body brings to our life are also the value our body brings to relationships, and define what we have to offer to people and to the world by the size and shape of our body. And of course, that's impacted by society and our relationships, and how important attractiveness is, and how attractive we view ourselves, how we define attractiveness. I think body image is also generational. I think that the definition of body image and how we define ourselves, view ourselves, is passed down from generation to generation. It's cultural, the importance of body and the importance that body image brings and the body brings to relationships can also be cultural as well. I think for a lot of people, it can be equated to self-image. I mean, if you think about even the criteria that is a part of some eating disorders, that's the criteria is self-image, and that people base their self-worth on the size and shape of their body. It's right there in the DSM. And so I think for some people, it very much is self-image, and I think providing space in the room to talk about weight stigma and to ask people questions about how they define body image and what their experiences have been.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So we're kind of getting to my next question. It sort of bleeds into what contributes to body image and how we perceive ourselves. And so you already touched a little bit on that. It's our families, our great family of origin, our people that we grow up with. And you mentioned before we hopped on, it's not just about like the overt messages directed at us, but it's also how family members see themselves and how they view their bodies and what they say about their bodies and their workout routines and their eating routines and things of that nature, that thin beauty ideal. I was thinking about this also this morning, that I felt like we were, maybe when you and I were working together, so like 2016, sorry, I always do that. I think I left the treatment center and moved to Boulder in 2016. So 2014 to 2016, I literally have to look at my resume to see where I was when. But I think around 2014, 15, 16, there was like a big push to move away from idealizing the thin body, and like things like the Dove campaign. Do you remember that? I think that's kind of when it started, of embracing all body types and sizes. And that was so wonderful. And it felt like such a breath of fresh air. And also, I think that's when airbrushing got exposed. And now it feels like almost second nature to like, use a certain feature or lighting or airbrushing on all pictures, which yes, that's the word I'm looking for.
That's the new word for airbrushing, I think.
I mean, there's so many things that you can do to like change an image. And it was in America the Beautiful, that documentary where they had that model and they like took a picture of her and she was all dolled up, and then they like lifted her neck and gave her higher cheekbones and gave her wider eyes and all of these things. And I just remember thinking, and also sharing with clients when I would watch this with them, that like, if I were that model, like how it would feel, like that's not even the person, right? It feels so offensive. Like that's not even, that is not even close to what she looked like. And now it feels like, so there was this big push to, accept bodies, I feel, around that time. But I also feel like now we're kind of slipping back, like we're regressing in so many ways, culturally, politically, right? And I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, but are you sensing that? Are you sort of like feeling that yourself, but also are you seeing that in your work with your clients too?
Yeah. So I think obviously what comes to my mind, and again, this is just my personal perspective and what I notice by working with clients, is is the impact of social media and the impact of these filters. Because before airbrushing, when you speak of it, and I remember even being at a treatment center I worked at a very long time ago, and, there were images coming out showing before and after of airbrushing, and people were really stunned that this was even happening. And it felt like a violation, but it was something that was only available to the models, to the actors. But these filters that are a part of every social media app are accessible to anybody and are accessible to young children whose brains haven't developed the ability to think abstractly. And that's a theme that I weave into all of my therapy sessions and that I will likely comment on again throughout this podcast. But it is so important that we remember as adults, and for parents or anybody that has an important role in a child's life, whether you're a parent or not, that children's brains don't have the ability to think abstractly until their early to mid-20s. And so we are putting these filters in the hands of a young person who is now having a hard time tolerating what they look like in the mirror because they don't look like these filters or think I'm supposed to look like these filters, or they are scrolling through other people's social media, which of course is everybody else's like best of reel, and judging themselves because they don't look a certain way when this person doesn't even look a certain way. And so I think that's really impacted, and it impacts adults too, if we're to be honest. I mean, kids aren't the only ones that are using filters on everything. I see adults' profile pictures on their social media being filtered pictures, highly filtered pictures. And it impacts all of us to not accept who we are. And then I think, gosh, it has to impact the compliments too, right? Because now I've put this profile picture of myself up that doesn't look like me, and I'm getting all these compliments about how stunning and beautiful I am. And yet, if I know that that's on some level, I know that that's not what I really look like, what is the impact of these compliments about me? And how does that contribute to, feeling to the impact of the compliment or being able to truly accept the compliment, and also the importance of superficial compliments, and not, instead of getting recognized for what we do and who we are, we're getting recognized for a picture that is altered.
Yeah. Yeah. And I hear that a lot, not even about body image, but even my clients fear, like, if you really knew me, right, I think you would reject me. It's so heartbreaking.
Right.
But I think that's kind of what we're saying about body image too. It's like, if you really knew what I looked like and who I really am to my core, then maybe you wouldn't think I'm okay. Maybe you wouldn't accept. And also, before we hopped on, Becca, we were talking about this notion of acceptance, right? Like, that body image is about connection and relationship and wanting to feel included and belonging, right? Like, that's on Maslow's hierarchy of needs, connection and belonging. Like, it is a basic fundamental need. Yeah. And if we don't feel accepted, then it can feel like earth-shattering. And I want to throw that out there too, and this is something that I was listening to another podcast that Marcy Evans did. She's an eating disorder registered dietitian. And she talked about like how the nervous system gets like totally dysregulated when you feel rejected. And we can feel that high level of anxiety and rejection by having such strong negative body image. And it's devastating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And not to harp on social media, you can see where some of my passion lies, but not to harp on it. But again, that's the whole thing about like liking and counting the likes and the comments of things, and how that can be so addicting, because there's literally, research has found that there's a dopamine effect. There's an impact on dopamine related to social media attention and or lack thereof. And it makes so much sense. Going back to the ability to think abstractly that adults have that kids don't, I think that this is how like very well-intended and well-educated parents get in trouble. And frankly, if I wasn't an eating disorder specialist, I probably wouldn't know this either. But I think so often I will hear parents say, like, when I ask them about their ideas of body image and how does your family talk about body image and how do you think your children learned, what body image was or learned to speak about or think about their body. And the parents will say, oh, I never commented on their body. I never said anything about their body. And then I ask, well, how do you comment and speak about yours? And then I get the nervous look often. It doesn't matter what I say about my body. It's my body. And I think that makes sense on some level, right? Because as adults, we are able to think abstractly and we can oftentimes separate ourselves. As kids, they don't understand the short-term, long-term impacts and risks of dieting. And all they hear is their family member talking about their body and changing the way they eat to impact their body. And the more comments we make even about our own bodies, that raises the level of importance, because what kids hear us talk about, whether we're a parent or not, what they hear us talk about, if we're adults that they're around, even teachers, right? Even coaches, and the importance of mentors in kids' life, if it's something they hear us talking about often, if every time we sit down to the dinner table, we're talking about how many calories are in something or how much I'm going to serve myself or how full I am or how it's going to impact my body when I'm done eating it or a week from now, they learn and they take that in and they ingest it and apply it to their own rules. The problem is that when we don't have the ability to think abstractly, we think in very all or nothing terms. And that's how these rules become these rules and these either or situations. Even something as simple as a child knowing that there's a scale in the bathroom, right? I mean, going to the bathroom is a very important thing. And if there is a scale sitting next to the toilet or next to the shower, another very important activity of daily living, showering, brushing teeth, going to the bathroom, if the scale is right there, then that must be a really also important activity. And if I see that every time every day as part of one of my family members' routines, they step on the scale, then that machine must have a lot of power and must be very important, whatever it has to say, because it's something that my family member does every day. Or they might observe them a nonverbal behavior on the scale, right? Looking down and going, and then maybe that person changes what they eat next, or maybe they make a comment to themselves. Again, these are very specific examples, but that is how impactful even nonverbal messages can be, and even messages and ways that we speak about ourselves can impact children without us ever directing a comment to them about their bodies. It's funny because in thinking about this podcast, I thought it would be fun because these are things that I talk about and I share with clients and people nod their heads and agree and it makes sense. And I thought, I have a teenage daughter. I'm going to ask her and see and just check in. And it's funny because as we're talking, obviously I'm giving these like really long-winded answers and explanations. And this just goes to show how all or nothing and simple a teenager's brain is. When I asked her, what is body image? Her simple answer was how people see their body. And then when I asked her what contributes to body image and how we perceive ourselves, how do we learn about that? Well, I had to rephrase it because she was confused about what contributes and perceives meant. And so I rephrased it for her in 14-year-old speak. And I asked, basically, how do we learn about what our bodies? And her simple answer was through our parents. And I thought, yes, we do. I mean, and it is so generational. And again, her answer was,
no, it's great. Straight to the point. And by the way, I really appreciate your thorough answers. I really do. It's a really big topic and we might have to do like a part 2, right? Yeah. But I think what you're saying is like, what messages are we sending and how are we sending them, right? And having something simple as a scale in the bathroom, that's often a very like simple, quick, direct question I ask when I'm doing like a diagnostic interview with kids or with families, parents that are there. And they might say, oh yeah, there's one like in every bathroom, but I don't really often use it. Or yeah, there's one in every bathroom. We use it sometimes, but still it's like, it's there. It has a presence. And And there's a
Forever.
lot of meaning associated with it, right? So also this notion of, even if you're not making direct comments to, someone in your family about their body, which I feel is totally criminal, but you're making comments about maybe yourself and don't think that has an impact. But if you are thinking that your body's wrong, right? Like, let's just say if a child's saying like, well, mom or dad thinks that their body's wrong, so maybe mine is wrong too. Maybe I shouldn't embrace my body or like my body, or I never even thought about like the size of this body part or that body part, my stomach, my thighs, my arms, until, mom or dad made some comments about it.
Right. Sometimes it's things that we don't realize that we could easily do automatically. And, even something, I always give this example whenever I'm giving a talk or a presentation, it is when we see somebody that we haven't seen in a long time, what's often the first thing we say to them? Oh, you look so great. Even if we don't think they look that great, it still comes flying out of our mouth. Why don't we say like, it's so nice to see you, right? And I think that that's even how automatic comments are around a dinner table, whether you're at a restaurant or not, without thinking. There's just so many automatic comments that come out, and they have impact, especially on somebody, again, who doesn't have that ability to think abstractly.
So I want to shift a little bit. We have a few minutes, but we'll try and squeeze in a few more topics here. That's okay. But this notion of the body image continuum. And so I know that we think of body image, right, on a continuum. And I'm wondering if we can just take a little bit of time to talk about it, describe it, and how do we move towards more of like a body positive image? I know that's $1 million question, right? But there's like complete body rejection and hate on one end, and then, body acceptance and positivity on another. And there's a lot of gray in the middle. And so can you speak to that a little bit?
Yes, I love this question because I think, what I see very often in my role as a therapist, and especially my role as a clinical supervisor, is that we can too easily jump to body positive expectations for our clients. And I think that oftentimes, especially for folks working in higher level of care, for clinicians working in higher level of care, and for clients that are participating in a higher level of care, body image is often approached as if it's an acute issue, right? So if I'm purging several times a day, that's an acute issue. That is something that I need to receive support on. And if I'm a clinician, that is something that I need to put at the top of the treatment plan. And we've got to work on decreasing this purging because it's so dangerous. And that's something we can decrease. And I'm going to teach coping skills, right? Body image is not an acute issue. Body image is a chronic issue. And it's interesting to me how typically acute, and depression can be chronic for some people, right? And an eating disorder behaviors can also be chronic for some people. And every other chronic issue, maybe not every other, I could be generalizing, but for all intents and purposes, most other chronic issues in our field, we have assessments for, right? We'll give somebody with depressive symptoms a PHQ-9. We'll give somebody with some anxiety symptoms the GAD-7. We'll complete a thorough and extensive biopsychosocial evaluation. We will give somebody the EAT-26 or the EDEQ when they're struggling with eating disorder symptoms. But we don't ask enough questions about body image. We're not doing a full assessment. We're trying to treat something and push somebody toward body positivity before we're even understanding what's the function of their body image, right? We worked so hard to understand the function of somebody's eating disorder. How is this gotten you through some hard times? Tell me how your eating disorder functions. We've gotten much better at that, but we're still not great at understanding body image and somebody's relationship with their own body at the level that we've practiced trying to understand the function and role of somebody's eating disorder. And I think that it is our responsibility to Ask people the important questions. And just as I was saying, like body image, it's self-image for a lot of our clients. And even asking people, what's the story of your birth? What's the story of your name? You would be surprised at how many people talk about how their story of their birth has been talked about. And oftentimes you will hear even growth expectations, parents' anxieties about growth and feeding, even from the time of infancy. Even the story of people's names, you'll be surprised. Asking people what they believe their caregiver's perception of them was at birth. All of these things are just like starting from the beginning and giving people the space to talk about it, giving people the space to talk about their experiences with weight stigma. Tell me what you've heard, and any size body, by the way, but tell me what you've heard, comments you've heard about your body from providers. How often have you been given a recommendation based on your weight alone? What did that feel like? What questions did you have? What was that like for you in the room? Did that make you angry? What did that make you want to do or say when you left the room? Right? So I think like performing a thorough body image history and assessment, and also thorough weight stigma history and assessment, and asking those questions and giving them space is so important before we can even expect somebody to develop body positivity. That might not be realistic for somebody for quite some time. What we want to do is understand if and how their body image might keep them from functioning in their daily lives. And I think that there is a difference between having a bad body image day. I mean, who doesn't? I don't know anybody that looks in the mirror and is like, I love every inch of my body and there's nothing that really changed. I'm not sure how often that happens. I think that the difference lies when we look at ourselves in the mirror and we find things we don't like. Are we still able to function? Are we still able to go about our daily activities and expectations?
And I will never forget learning from you, Becca, when you described this to me, this sort of hypothetical scenario, although I'm sure it happens a lot, where you have two people, right? And they might both struggle with body image, but like person A, is planning a day at the beach with their friends, right? Gets up in the morning, throws on that swimsuit, looks in the mirror, does not like what they say, and like, oh, well, okay, and throws on a beach cover-up and goes anyway, right? And participates on this fun beach day with their friends, even though they're not loving every inch of their body, like you say. And then person B, similar scenario, right? Beach day with their friends, wakes up, looks in the mirror, has the bathing suit on, looks in the mirror and thinks, absolutely not going outside, not going to see the light of day, not going to see anyone, canceling the day. And that's so devastating, right? And so impactful, both a very same scenario, but very different reactions and perceptions and experiences. Like so many factors that contribute to that moment, right? Of like the family messages and societal images and social media and maybe trauma and things like that. So I'm not trying to simplify, but just to highlight the very different reactions that people can have. And it sort of does fall in a line with this continuum, right? Like, I don't love my body, but I'm still going to do the thing. Or I don't love my body and I'm going to crawl into a hole.
Yeah. Right. And you don't have to love your body to be a functioning human being or to be in recovery from an eating disorder, right? That might just not be something that happens. And I think, historically, I think a thing I used to hear clinicians say to folks is body image is the first to come and the last to go. And that's just I want clinicians to stop saying that, because body image doesn't go anywhere. And negative body image thoughts don't stop. They don't go away. And it's important for us to learn to recognize them and acknowledge them, and they're there. And the goal is to not allow them to keep us from functioning or to keep us from doing the activities we love or to keep us from having social interaction or to allow it to change our relationship with food for that day or that week.
Yeah. How does it show up in the behaviors? What if, I don't mean to sound so pessimistic, but I think a lot of people might have this question of what if my body image never improves? What if it never gets better? Then how do you respond to that? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that is a question that we need to give space to. I think that too often as clinicians, we can rush to find the answer or rush to provide some positive outlook. And sometimes that can be invalidating of somebody's experience. And so I think I would say, like, let's talk about that. What if? What if your body image never improves? You know, are there parts of your body image that you feel like might never improve? Let's explore that. And then are there parts of your body image that might improve? And again, once you understand somebody's definition of body image and if it's equivalent to self-image, where it comes from, how they learned about what it meant to be in their body, maybe it's related to their gender or even their sexuality or their identity. Understanding all those pieces is so important to be able to help people get to the next step. And, there might be parts of their body image that might never change, that might always be a source of difficulty, but that doesn't mean that it has to keep them from functioning.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for that response. I really love that. And maybe we'll end with, this has been, a question that I've been asking a lot of guests. What is your most frequently asked question? And I know our topic has been body image. So have there been like a question that you get asked a lot about body image? What is it and how do you respond?
Yeah, I think it's funny. The question I get, and I get more questions from clinicians about body image, clinicians that I supervise about body image, than I do from patients. And the clients, patients, whichever term folks use, yes, I think they're curious about, they want to change it, but they don't seem as confused about how to talk about it or intimidated by talking about it as clinicians do. And so, again, I really appreciate the opportunity to be able to speak to that because clinicians often feel stuck. And we can all have those moments, no matter how many years we have in the field, of having to like take a moment or get consultation on a case. I mean, we all need that. It's part of our profession, an important part of our profession to not do this in a silo. But, I think body image is a topic that we can feel our clients are stuck on, but most of the time it's us, the clinicians, that are stuck on how to talk about it. And again, I sound like a broken record, I know, but it's usually because we haven't asked enough questions and we haven't done an assessment and we don't truly understand the role that body image and or self-image plays in our clients' lives, in the development of their eating disorder, even as a survival skill. So yeah, I would say that's how I would answer that. We spend so much time doing this around eating disorders and other, disorders. And again, body image is part of the criteria for an eating disorder, and it bears its own assessment and its own time and space.
Couldn't agree with you more. And this maybe feels like a good place to end. And I just want to say, Becca, thank you so much for your insights and your thorough answers, and for your daughter's experiences too, and her answers and her highlighting some things. I think it's really, really important to hear from you both. And maybe we'll have you, and maybe we'll have your daughter on too. Maybe.
Yeah, she would love that. She would love that. I think, again, I will leave you with this, and this is why body image and asking these questions and doing these assessments is so important. Probably every eating disorder specialist you'll interview on this podcast will say this, and it is worth saying every single time, that eating disorders have the highest mortality rate out of any other mental illness, aside now from opioid dependence. And if people don't think that body image could cause suicidal ideation, they're very wrong. Eating disorders also have high rates of suicide, which I think is part of that high mortality rate. And of course, there are medical consequences too. But I think what became so evident to me that I say this because I don't think I remind myself enough just how devastating body image can be to somebody's self-image and to their mental health. And as a risk factor, identifying negative body image as a risk factor. Again, going back to the abstract thinking and the all or nothing, more simple brain that adolescents have. When I asked my daughter the question, how would you describe the body image continuum? Her brain put it on a scale of 1 to 10, of course. And She said, 10, you feel good and you don't care what other people think. And 1 is you're super insecure about your body and want to die because you're afraid people at school will judge you. And I think that really says it all, especially a teenager, middle school teenager's experience that and the influence that peer relationships have and the impact.
Sure.
Of
Yeah,
one's
that's
peers.
how important this topic is. So devastating and so important to talk about. And so thank you for being part of this conversation. And
Truly my pleasure and
it's
an
wonderful
honor.
to see
Thank
you. And if listeners need to get in touch with you, we'll have your contact info in the show notes. And
Yes. And so I'm the proud owner of a group practice. And if any clinicians out there interested in learning more about eating disorders or working with eating disorders, I offer training as a part of joining Bardwell Behavioral. And I'm always looking for new folks to join the team. And if anybody out there would like to meet for a free 15-minute consultation with myself or anyone else on the team, they're more than willing to reach me at Becca@bardwellbehavioral.com, or you could even schedule a consultation directly through the website, www.bardwellbehavioral.com, or 860-398-9118.
thank you for clearing how to get in touch with you. And if you missed that or need to see it and read it, it will be in the show notes, and you will be available to take those calls, whether it's a therapist who wants to learn from the best or if it's a client seeking eating disorder recovery help. So thank you so much again, Becca.
Yes. Thank you so much. This was so fun. I really appreciate it. And thank you for doing this podcast.
Thank you. Well, thank you for being a part of it. And hope to have you back on later at a later date. Awesome. Okay,
I love that.
Thanks everyone for joining, and we'll see you next time. Bye for now.
Thank you, everyone, for taking the time to listen in this week. I'm so glad you're here with me as we learn more from our wise bodies and about eating disorder recovery. For more, follow me on social media, and please share the Wise Body podcast with your friends. Lastly, if you're interested in a free client consultation, please reach out on drhughes.com. And remember, always take care of yourself and your temple. See you next time on the Wise Body podcast.